maybe we do pick our name. I do think, having worked with hundreds, if not thousands of people, that sometimes your name can have like really weird or bad connotations. Some people are named after someone in their family that everyone hates. Then you carry that. Or you're named after someone who died tragically and they tried to honor that person, but you're here now and you didn't even know them. And like there can be like um, a lot of stuff tied up in like that name. And that's also why like I deal in name changes, which is a big thing to do. But it's also like just really worth it to choose something new and name yourself. Like it's a very empowering process for most people.
Welcome to the Numerology Show. In this episode, we're joined by the amazing Novalee Wilder, a professional numerologist, a writer, and a teacher who has dedicated her life to decoding the language of numbers. With a deep passion for guiding others through their personal and their spiritual evolution, Novalee brings a wealth of knowledge on how numerology shapes our destiny, our personality, and our cosmic journey as well. Now, she's the host of the Numerology podcast, where she explores the mystical world of numbers. And she runs the Numerology School, where she teaches the 9 base numbers and the 42 double numbers, the numerological essence, life goals and lessons, the Chaldean alphabet and numeroscope readings, family trees, patterns of attraction, and ethical readings, plus lots more as well. So it's super exciting to explore the numerology school. But in this episode, me and Novalee, or Novalee and I, should I say, will be geeking out over angel numbers, exploring more deeply into Chaldean numerology and how these ancient codes can guide your life purpose and your spiritual awakening. Plus, if you're fascinated by angel numbers and numerology, Novalee has a special book bundle as well, which is available on Amazon. And this features her 2 incredible books, a little bit of angel numbers and a little bit of numerology, which is just a beautiful bundle to get hold of. So I would like you to join us then today for this powerful conversation as we unlock the secrets of numbers with Novalee Wilder. So welcome, Novalee. It's lovely to see you here today.
Thank you, Hayden. That was such a lovely intro. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I'm absolutely delighted to have you with me. I've been scoping out a lot of numerologists across the planet, and actually, you were one of the people that I wanted to speak to the most. And I just
I feel
absolutely
special.
love what you offer. I really genuinely do. So I'd love to dive in and explore your personal journey and background first, just so everybody gets to know
Yes.
you as well. So, what led you into numerology in the first place? Was there a specific moment or an event that sparked your interest?
Yeah, so I think everyone has a story about their name. Like everyone I've ever talked to have like a story about their name, why they were named, who they were named after, if there's any kind of like funky reasoning or like meaning behind their name. So when I grew up, I was called Christine. And when I was 8 years old, I saw my birth certificate for the first time, or my christening, actually, I should say. And I realized that I had a different name on that, that actually it was Eva Christine, like Ava. And I was 8 years old, and like most 8-year-old children, like the possibility of a new name, I was like, this is so exciting. I don't want to be called Christine anymore. And kind of a split happened where I went to school the next day and everyone called me Ava. And from then on, like that was whenever I met new people, enrolled in a school, whatever, everyone would call me Ava and my family would call me Christine. And that's it can be a little bit like a identity switch, or there can something happens, I feel like, in us when we're literally a different person a little bit with our family, and like then a different person in like the other parts of our lives. So I had already like a little bit of a split going. And at some point in my 20s, I told my family, hey, I actually would like for you to call me Ava. And they were a little grumbly, but they were like, okay, I guess it is your name. And then I moved to New York in 2014 to pursue acting. I grew up in Denmark. And I had this opportunity to be whoever I wanted to be. Like, I really recommend that to anyone moving far away is like you get to reinvent yourself. And that's not cheating. That is sometimes more like a cheat code to move forward faster or try out new things or not be limited by the people around you and their preconceived notions about you. And so I tried to be someone new a little bit. And I realized that a lot of stuff was still coming up. I was stuck in some of my same patterns, thought patterns, emotionally. I was like, what is going on? And I had a friend who had been to a numerologist and she had changed her name. And I was like, this is so crazy. What are you talking about? First, it was gluten and almond milk, and then it was like crystals everywhere, and then like the spiritual world, and maybe also the world of like eating a little bit differently or trying out new things to make your body feel better. Like that had been creeping in over time, but I was like, now we're changing our names. This is insane. But I was also curious. So I booked a session with a numerologist, and I had my first numerology reading, and this was a Chaldean numerologist, and it was a name change session because I was a little bit just like, let's go all in. And she mapped out my life both internally and externally in a way that I found very, very scarily accurate. And she didn't know me at all before that, like, yeah. And I was just like, this is crazy that you can see all these things that I try to keep hidden. And she was like, well, a name change would help you. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, but we will have to change all your names. Like you can't keep anything to change everything. And I did. I was a little bit like, go big or go home. And so I changed my entire name. And we don't have time in this podcast to cover everything that happened, but like so many things changed. And not only did I like have a whole spiritual awakening, um, and got very lucky in many ways. Like there were a lot of physical changes and then energetic changes. Like it bred this no, like whole new passion in me where I was like, I don't understand how this works, but I can tell that it works. Now I need to know how. And that was like also like finding a teacher, finding the first teacher, then finding the second teacher, like getting certified. Then realizing that maybe I also had a talent for numerology and conveying it to others brought me to like, yeah, like not just doing name change sessions for others, but realizing that like teaching it, like I think whenever you find a spiritual tool that really resonates with you and becomes embodied, then you have at least a little bit of a responsibility to pass it on. If you
Yeah.
understand something deeply, you have a responsibility to pass it on. Yeah. That's the long-winded road to like how I got into it. Yeah.
Well, I love that. It's amazing that through, just a name change, that everything else seemed to fall into place for you, and it gave you such a deeper understanding of your purpose here to the point where, you it inspired that sort of burning desire of you to also continue the work as a numerologist. So, you know, amazing. It's so inspirational. So how specifically do you think did it, change your personality? And was it your personality that changed when your name changed, or was it just everything?
So it felt like everything. So knowing what I know now, I kind of understand that of course there is a lot more to people than just their numbers and their birthday and their names and like just like you're more than your horoscope. And there is more to you than what the numbers can share. But I also think that like the numbers do share, like the day you were born is a portal you walk through or like a path that your soul has chosen and said, you know what, let's try this configuration on this journey just for this lifetime. Um, and the name is kind of a filter on top of that configuration. So you can have, like I do, have a bunch of life themes that has to do with like leadership and almost like cheerleading and leading other people and being a beacon and like becoming a teacher and showing your light and being in integrity and like a lot about authority. You can have all these things that are kind of part of that portal, and then you can have a name that says, let's throw a little sand into this machine. Let's make it like not really work so well. Let's make the some of these lessons take a long time. Let's throw some powerlessness in there. Let's see how you learn through that. I think now I know that it's challenging to learn and grow through adversity. It's also challenging to grow through big expansion really fast. And I've tried kind of both. And I can't really say which one I would choose because there's like merits in both. But what happened with my name change was a lot of those old filters and ways of seeing the world and seeing myself kind of fell away. So everything got a lot sharper and clearer. And I got a lot more specific in how I showed up and what I was asking for. So it was things like, I mean, I think we all have some issues around love and relationships. Like we all have a journey there. Um, One of the first things that happened after my name change was that I had this real strong impulse to actually sit down and look at some of that trauma and look at some of that stuff and be like, let's look at it and be honest and take responsibility for my own part in my own suffering. And then, like, let's clarify what love is and what it could look like if another person showed up as a life partner. And that's like one of the things that happened was like, I met the man that I'm now married to, and I had not even like considered marriage or like a like a thing to do. Um, and also like with my acting at the time and later with numerology, like the clarity and like what feels truthful and what just feels like filler, fluff, posturing, excess, yeah.
So, what made you choose the name Novalee?
Oh, well, that's like it Novalee actually came to me. So like the original session I had with the numerologist, I changed my name after talking to her and I changed my name real fast. Like, it took me a week or something to sit with the name lists and I just picked a bunch of pretty names. I changed it. And then when I became a numerologist myself, which I think happens to everyone who has like some kind of spiritual tool, is that like you sit with your own chart and you go, what else is there? Or like, what could we try out? Or do I have a name vibration I'm like crushing on? Or like, is there something I've let go of that I would want more of? And one of the things that I could see in some of the issues or challenges in my birth name had to do with communication and having a hard time sharing myself with others and sharing my emotions, feeling seen, feeling heard. I'm also a Leo, that might have had an impact as well. So like Novalee has a 32.5 name vibration. And so we say the double digit and then we say the digit sum in Chaldean Numerology. So 32.5. And that has a lot to do with like connecting with people on broader level. So we say like audiences, fans, readers, followers, not necessarily one-on-one, not necessarily everything a heart to heart or like a close connection. But if you want more reach, then a 5 vibration is really good. And so I had already looked at Nova because my old name was Ava, and I was like, Nova, Novalee. And it's interesting. With my old name, I would always have to like spell my last name, and I got really annoyed. This is one of my indicators also with my clients. Sometimes they come and I'm like, they're just like, I cannot spell my old name one more time for people. Like I just get so annoyed. Like there's something there that's like a little itchiness. I often have to spell Novalee and I have to pronounce it for people because they are like Novalee or something. But for whatever reason, it doesn't matter at all. I'm like, it's all good. Like I don't like it just fits me very well. Um, yeah,
It's a
it's a
lovely name. I really like it. It's so unusual. I don't think I've ever met another Novalee in my life before. It's unique, and it's interesting that you say that it carries the vibration of 32 over 5,
yeah.
because the system that I work with, the color mirrors, these
Mm,
beautiful bottles here,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
they bottle number 32 is called communication, and it's this beautiful blue and green color combination. And it actually brings up sort of past lives or parallel life issues of where you may have been persecuted, so it goes back
Mm,
to the European persecutions, and even the burning of the witches sort of stuff as well, so it can carry that, where you sort of don't step into your magic and your power because you were literally killed because of it,
yeah.
in a
I don't think
parallel.
that's a coincidence. Like I feel like that's one of my tests whenever I meet a new system or a new tool. I'm like, where are the overlaps? Because we are all looking at the same terrain through different maps.
Yeah.
So my map is numerology, yours is color therapy, and like it's not weird to me that like some of these things are going to overlap either with numbers or colors or connections to like planets or what have you. I'm like, yeah, it all makes sense.
It all makes perfect sense, doesn't it? So the other really interesting thing about you, Novalee, is that you mentioned that you trained originally as an actress. And
Mm.
so are you still an actress or have you moved completely out
Yeah,
of that now?
I mean, I took a long break. I think I needed, I mean, first of all, numerology hit me like a sledgehammer. I was just like, everything, like, I just want to know everything. I want to apply it whenever I had a session. I was like mind blown, writing notes, like, how does it work for this person? Like, the power of names and name changes, the power of like our identity and how we identify ourselves, connection to groups and people, heritage, lineage, ancestors. So I feel like there's nothing to me that this does not touch. And so I needed a kind of a break from acting to do this. And I was very um, lucky to be like, my publisher of like a little bit of numerology, she reached out to me, like the editor reached out to me. Sure, I had put, and this is like a manifestation tip for anyone who wants to manifest. If you want to be something, put it in your bio. I put writer in my bio. I was writing, but I wasn't a published author. I put writer in my bio because I was writing all the time. And so when my editor reached out and was like, "Hey, do you want to write a book about numerology?" I was like, sure, that would fit right in with these things. So I took a long break from acting. I kind of got a little back to it in 2022. I'm doing it a little bit more now in like 2025, um, with a slightly different approach where it's maybe a little bit more about my spiritual like evolution. I think the way I approached acting before was a little single-minded and a little too tied to my identity. And now I try to hold it a little more loosely and see how pursuing truth on stage can like release more truth in my everyday life and make me feel more free.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. It's lovely that you're still continuing, the art of acting alongside of numerology and how they both kind of interconnect and influence each other, and how it gives you such a deeper understanding of yourself so that you can perform roles a lot more intimately as well. So, okay, so let's move on to exploring a little bit more about Chaldean numerology.
Sure.
And I know
Yes.
that it's quite different from the system of numerology that I specialize in, which is Pythagorean numerology. Can you explain what sets it apart? What's different about it? Have you explored Pythagorean as well?
Yeah, I mean, all schools of numerology have a lot in common, more in common than what sets them apart from each other. So, like, a lot of our understanding of what I call the base numbers, or someone would call a life path. Sometimes I also think that sometimes we come up with a fancy term for things or do an extra calculation where we should probably just go back to basics. So whether you call it life path numbers or soul path or soul urge or personality or what have you, um, the basic description of the nine numbers are usually almost the same. When we get to the double digits, sometimes we get confused. I feel people get confused. They start thinking they are master numbers, they are a 22 or something, where I'm like, you're always a single number. Because double numbers hold specific karmic patterns, and while they might play out in your life, it's the description of the single number that you should usually pay attention to. And then I think Chaldean numerology, when it comes to names, is a lot more complex than Pythagorean numerology. There's simply just um, more books on it, so like more knowledge to be had around like names and name vibrations. And one of the tools in Chaldean numerology is the numeroscope, which is like a chart that overlays your name on top of your birthday, which also means if your name changes, your numeroscope changes. And so certain things in your life will change based on this. Um, which is why it's always interesting when people go through a bunch of name changes to see, like, when I look at their numeroscopes and see, like, so what did you do with this name change? Because there's always like a choice, maybe from a soul level, to like intensify something in a numeroscope. So Chaldean numerology really emphasizes like the naming aspect and how much a name can influence a person and how people could have the exact same birthday but different names, which usually happens even if you have twins, they do have different names and how those names impact that person. Like that's the biggest. And then there is also like we look at, I think it's called something else in Pythagorean numerology, but like yearly cycles. So like the cycles that people are born into and how they unfold and how we pinpoint major events. And that's also something that like a name change changes. So like a name change will impact your yearly cycles. That's also like an aspect that I look at when I do kind of like with transits, in astrology of like what is it, what's coming, and depending on your numeroscope, how is it going to feel for you to go through it. So I often describe kind of like this image of like using a ship in an ocean with a captain where like your base number, which means like your birthday, is unchangeable. That's the captain. The captain is the captain of the ship, but the ship is your name. It's your numeroscope. And so like depending on the ship, we might experience the ocean and the weather a little bit different. And the ocean and the weather is your yearly cycles, which are also a little bit determined by your name. So like there's a lot of complexities there about like how we read people and how we look at some people are just born with stronger ships or like gotten a name very early that was very strong. And so sometimes we can look at them and go, that's a crazy life, but you really seem to be doing well with it or have a lot of success. Um yeah, and like yeah, those are some of the aspects that we look at like in Chaldean numerology, where
Yeah.
to me it's yeah, like in Pythagorean numerology, I haven't seen as much emphasis on names, and I can also tell that sometimes some of the descriptions I see around their names, like there's just more complexity in a numeroscope than what I see in some of the Pythagorean charts. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's fascinating how much more the name vibration is significant within Chaldean and how it influences, the path of the other numbers as well. So it's almost like it's like a camouflage or an overlay, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
That
that's a really
governs.
good way to see it. Yeah, camouflage, overlay, filter. I use filter because everyone uses Instagram and stuff, so they understand that sometimes you put a filter on things and it looks like a completely different person. Yeah.
I love names actually. I've always been really fascinated by names. And there are certain names that I absolutely love, and
Mm.
more than others. Like I'm a real fan of the old-fashioned names, as opposed to the newer names that have come in now. And I often, think that some names do sound really strong, and others, seem a bit wishy-washy. But that it's great to know that that there is meaning behind all of that. Do you believe that we choose our own names then in Chaldean numerology at a soul level before we come to the earth plane, or is that one of
I
those sort of
mean,
ambiguous questions?
I think a better question is sometimes even if we picked it, so what? Like sometimes I have that thing when people are like, "Oh, what's a choice my soul made?" Okay. Well, your soul is still here right now, this moment. They didn't cease to exist when you got in here, or tried this form of the roller coaster. That is this version of life. And I also think sometimes when the soul picks something, it's like sitting outside of the restaurant, looking at the menu and picking then. And then you get into the restaurant, which is life, and you're like, "Ooh, there's some other things on the menu that I should have maybe ordered instead of what I ordered." So maybe we do pick our name. I do think, having worked with hundreds, if not thousands of people, that sometimes your name can have like really weird or bad connotations. Some people are named after someone in their family that everyone hates. Then you carry that. Or you're named after someone who died tragically and they tried to honor that person, but you're here now and you didn't even know them. And like there can be like um, a lot of stuff tied up in like that name. And that's also why like I deal in name changes, which is a big thing to do. But it's also like just really worth it to choose something new and name yourself. Like it's a very empowering process for most people because our parents, I think for most people, chose that name. And with that name, like parents always pass on what they carry. It's the rule. They don't just pass on that last name. You always get something from them. Like when I do family trees, I can see that, oh, you could only have gotten that name vibration from your dad because he carries it as a middle name. And even if it's not the same name, the name vibration is the same. And that's what people do. They pick what they know. I had this client the other day where I kind of talked about it like as flowers. Like if you were going to pick a bunch of flowers, you would pick the flowers you could name. You would not start describing, I mean, like you would not start imagining new flowers. You would be like, I know these flowers like rose, tulip, daffodil, whatever. I'm going to pick those and I'm going to bring them. And that's what people do. They they pick the same energies that they know. And so often in families, things intensify, which means also why like when you got a bunch of people from the same family together, you usually got a like intense amount of specific name vibrations, which is why sometimes it is a lot more intense to be in a group of your family, especially if you share some of those name vibrations. Maybe they have to do with anger or depression, or maybe they're all teachers, so they're all just filled with really good advice and they have a hard time like taking that advice themselves, but they dish it out like it's nobody's business. Um, so yeah, like maybe our soul picked. And so what? You're allowed to change your mind, like you're allowed to try something new. Like
Yeah.
that's my kind of thing.
I love that, and it's interesting because as you're saying that, I'm thinking about my own family and how certain names are dominant, not only within my own family because of, being named after the grandparent or, the
Mm,
father's middle name, but also within my husband's family as well. So there are two names like Anne and Anthony that seem to
Go
be
on
very
forever.
dominant, within both
Yeah.
families. And of course, so it's almost like it's ancestral, and then it brings up those karmic lessons as well. Is that what you're saying when the
Yeah, I
names?
mean things just get, I mean, how do you learn a lesson? Usually by intensifying it some way. So I think also maybe I wouldn't even say that we pick our name, but we probably pick certain aspects of our family and implication. Like that's what when I read birth numeroscopes, what I'm really reading is what was that family like and how did you fit into it? And once in a while, I'll have people who go through, often women, they get married and they get divorced and they get married again. And they say, oh, I don't think I believe in numerology because, I've gotten married a bunch of times to different men and like nothing changed. And when I look at it, I'm like, you kept marrying your dad's last name's energy again and again and again. So yeah, they were different men, but like a lot of these patterns, they just stayed the same. So to me, that's like one of the proofs that like numerology does work, and we are often just attracted to what we know, which is why sometimes it's really helpful to have like a numerologist look at it kind of like impartially and
Mm.
say, this is the pattern and this is how it's playing out for you, and this is how it might get internalized in you, and this is how you might be able to let it go.
So the Chaldean alphabet is very key, isn't it, in this system? So how does it
Yeah.
influence the way names and numbers are interpreted?
So just to differentiate between like Pythagorean numerology and Chaldean numerology when it comes to the alphabet. So I don't know who came up with it in Pythagorean numerology, but when you look at the Pythagorean alphabet, it's just like one is A and two is B, and like we just slapped two systems together, and we were like, they probably fit like that, which is something I always find interesting. Not all systems fit together perfectly. So the Chaldean alphabet is based on the Hebrew alphabet, and there's a bunch. I mean, if I write another book about numerology, which I probably will some day down the line, like I got a lot of nerd alert moments around like some of the history of like how the Hebrew alphabet is like divided, not just into like consonants and vowels, but like other aspects that have like a spiritual connotation, like directly tied to that letter of the alphabet. But the Chaldean alphabet just does not fit into like the 1A to B in the same way. They were originally tied both into like what it sounds like, but also the word. So like we don't have this in English, but like lots of or, like older languages, if you did your alphabet A, B, C, you were at the same time counting one, two, three. So in that way, which is what I feel like the Pythagorean approach has tried to do, to just slap those two things together. Um, so like they were counting and they were sounding out the letters, but like some of those letters were kind of like chants too. So like if we have in the um like, and we have that with like Indian numerology as well, that like the sounds of the letters are tied to different like deities and gods and goddesses in the same way. So in that way, I wouldn't say the alphabet is more important, but it has a lot more different like uh, hook points into other information, which is why it's sometimes really interesting. I don't do this all the time. Usually I just pop people's names into my online calculator. So just real quick, find the name vibration behind it. But sometimes I do sit and look at it and go, ooh, there's a lot of five here. Or there's a lot of like, there's also something interesting when people pick out names, and I've found it with myself that they don't just get, they don't just fall in love with specific spellings. Like maybe they like things that end on A, which is like a very feminine thing. Or maybe they like a lot of silent letters, which is also interesting. Like when people are like, oh, I like these names that are spelled with a bunch of letters, but you don't actually say them all out loud. Um, or they're just like, I just want as many L's as possible for whatever reason. And it's often like it's the number behind that letter that they're like, oh, I just want as much like five as I can get. Um, yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I'm just thinking now then, I like names beginning with B. So,
Hmm.
so why is that? Like, why am I attracted to names that begin with B? Like my dog's called Bailey, and my favorite name is
Yeah.
Brenda.
Bailey and Brenda. I love it. Do you have like the original bee name that you liked? Was there like before Bailey and Brenda, was there like once upon a time like
It was actually Brenda. Yeah, I think Brenda was the original B name.
oh, I love
Yeah, and
that.
it's
I love
always
that.
stuck with me. So I want to call my car Brenda. I wanted to call my dog Brenda, but it was a boy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm wondering, so what's your birthday?
I'm the 16th of October, 1972.
1972. Let me just 1972. Yeah, I mean, B is two in the Chaldean, and if you're a seven, because you said 16th, right?
Yeah, the 16th of October.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, I can't say this is the reason. I can say that like if you're a seven, the base number seven in Chaldean numerology, and it's based on the day you were born, not the month, not the year, just the day. So one plus six is seven. So seven's shadow number is two. They are friends. And there's always like often like a attraction pattern between seven and two people. So like you as a seven might be attracted to people who have like either they are basically twos or they have a lot of two energy. Um, I find it like it's like air and water. So like there's some mirroring in it. Like I look at you, you look at me, we look at each other. It's nice. It's like a little like the wind moves and the water like ripples. There's like a specific kind of like I don't have to explain myself energy between seven and two because you guys both come a little bit from the other side. Or like, I mean, we say that seven is the phone number to heaven in Chaldean numerology. So like there's a little extra um connection or channel or string, like more things come through seven people. Um, sometimes the phone line gets a little confused and we're like, wait, what is the message? Like they're channeling something, you're telling me something, but I don't even know. Whereas sevens are often like, well, does it matter if the message makes sense? And the two energy would say, no, it just matters how it feels. So I would say like if a lot of two energy is something you're attracted to, that would be very natural. And it would often just be like that thing of like, I don't know how to say it. Like it's like it is what it is, and this is fine. Like this is not like you don't have to explain yourself, you don't have to make yourself different, you just have to be, which is also sometimes like one of those lessons we get from twos that I feel like it's very misunderstood in today's world. Like there's not a lot of space to just be.
So the B is the same, then it carries the vibration of the two like it does in
Yeah,
Pythagorean numerology.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it's also like we should not underestimate this, like what it looks like. Maybe you like those curves in a bee.
Mm.
Maybe do you like the the capital B better than like the lowercase b? You're like, oh, feels nice to write. I thought about that. It's one of the things I tell my clients. I'm like, do not pick a name until you've written it by hand a couple of times. What does it feel like to sign something? Like maybe you figure out that you don't really like, I don't know, that capital letter. That's information, you know. It's more important that you like writing it than the URL is available online.
Uh,
Like you can get a different web page, but like there's something about like the physicality of a name and like having to write it and embody it. Like that's part of it too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was speaking to a lady um, in the podcast, and she is a bizology expert, and she was explaining about how the look and feel of the letter of the
Mm,
alphabet, is also indicative. It tells its own little narrative. Like
of
she's
course,
called
yeah.
Joe and she's got the J, and she says that, it's straight up and down, but then it's got a little curvy bit at the bottom, which means that sometimes she needs a bit of support. And, I found it quite
I love
interesting.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, I liked it as well. But anyway, let's move on because I'd like to find out because
sure,
you
sure.
teach about family trees and patterns of attraction. So, how does numerology help us to uncover karmic cycles within our families? I think loads of people want to hear about this.
Yeah, it's one of the things that, like, it's one of the homework assignments I give my students once we're a little bit into the numerology school. And sometimes it's hard because some people don't have a lot of history. They don't have, maybe they're immigrants, there can be a lot of reasons we don't know something about our history. But kind of like you can do your family tree and just write out the names and the birthdays. So you can just write out all the numeroscopes and see those patterns throughout your family. This is something I actually have it from like 12 steps groups where it's one of the tools they give to people in 12-step groups to kind of understand how it couldn't be any other way. If you have some kind of addiction or issue, it didn't start with you and you are not the defective one in the family. And even if your addiction or trouble looks differently than like the rest of your family, usually some of those patterns, they live on and on and on and on until when someone stops and looks at it and says like it ends with me and I'm going to change these things. So I give my students this homework because then they can also see some of the gifts. Like there are also certain names and name vibrations that travel through families as like beautiful karmic gifts that keep people literally alive. The Jews have a shit ton of names that have a shit ton of protection in them. Um, and one could, of course, say, well, they don't seem very protected. And I sometimes say, well, there are still millions and millions of Jews in the world, even though they have been prosecuted and treated abhorrently by many nations and many people. Not to zoom in on this, but like I teach that pattern of like karma and what like the gifts that we have from other people in our family and some of the challenges. And also sometimes this helps to zoom out for people and see that like numerology doesn't care if you're born in a male or female body, but it's going to feel differently to carry some of these filters if you're born in a male body or in a female body. It's going to like some of the way you're going to interpret and express some of that energy will have to be tempered based on the culture you grew up in, the family you grew up in, the country you grew up in. Um, some name vibrations also do better in some countries. And then people immigrate, and that name vibration does not maybe do so well in that country. And like there's some interesting things also about like this is something I look at because I also work with a lot of expats and immigrants. It's like different naming laws in different countries and like Americanizing or Anglicizing a name. Or if you move to France, they throw in a free name change if you become a citizen in France, and they really want you to change into something that sounds French. They don't really want you to like keep something that doesn't like fit in. So like looking at like a journey of a family and maybe a group of souls that come together more than once, which is also something we can look at like yearly cycles and the birth years of people. We can sometimes see that like maybe there's a karmic connection between you and a grandparent. And there's a certain karmic pattern that you guys are here to help or live out with each other. Or sometimes if people have really challenging issues within their family, sometimes you can also see, oh, you're carrying them now and they carried you then. And so it's not fair because in this lifetime, I mean, we can talk about past lives, but they are usually not as present for us as our current life. And sometimes we can we can understand and forgive and get a little perspective on like, why am I the grown up in this one if you were supposed to be the grown up? Well, maybe because there's like a larger balance or scale at play.
Mm. You see that all the time, don't you? Interesting what you were just saying about France as well. Like, because myself and my husband are thinking about moving from Australia, where we live now, to France, and his
Ooh.
surname is Darvel. So hopefully, though, that's French enough.
I
You
mean,
know?
you don't have to. It's just one of those interesting things that, like, I know because I'm a Danish American now. So I have a Danish citizenship and American citizenship, and it's just an interesting thing with like immigration and like how some countries are like naming laws. Can you change your name? What can you change it to? Who do you have to honor? Um, yeah, and like how many people really take that as an opportunity to change something. Like that's also like some countries don't allow name changes. You are kind of stuck with what you got. Unless you get married, they'll allow that. Which is also an interesting thing. It says something about like the culture in that country. And there's some interesting things actually specifically with France where apparently what I've been told is that like numerology was all the rage a couple of hundred years ago, and some of their naming laws actually got changed so that like for example, a child in France, I think when you're born, you have to be named within 48 hours or something. And they did that because like the babies kept getting new names. Like they would go to one numerologist and get one name, then go to another numerologist and get another name and change the baby's name again. And I guess someone was like, no more of this tomfoolery. You just get 48 hours, you pick a name, you stick to it. You can't change it. Um, yeah.
Now, in Chaldean numerology, certain double numbers like the
Mm,
22, the 11 and 33, they hold powerful meanings like they do in Pythagorean numerology. They're known as master numbers in Pythagorean. So, how do
yeah.
these influence a person's numerological blueprint?
Yeah. So like one of the things, like one of the, I don't think it's an actual law, but one of my teachers called it Chiros Law. And Chiro was one of the Chaldean numerologists we know the most about because he wrote a bunch of books. And he was a little bit of like a celebrity numerologist. So there's a bunch of like, both like, what do you call those? Like he gave advice, like numerology advice, like he
Okay.
had a little column in newspapers where people could write in with their problems and he
Yeah.
would give them numerology advice. So we know a bunch about him. And one of his rules that I really do believe in is that any number that shows up more than once, we really have to pay attention to. And the more a number shows up everywhere around a person or in a numeroscope or like a double digit, like where it's like 1122336655, whatever you have to pay attention when a number is just like one thing. And so I look at this specifically in birthdays. There is something like most people have a bunch of numbers to play with. I'm a 1 and a 6 in Chaldean numerology because I was born in a day that adds up to 1 and a year that adds up to 6. And interestingly enough, this overlaps with my um, astrology information because I'm a Leo with a Cancer rising, and these numbers and like these things fit perfectly. Once in a while, I'll have a client where it's just all 1 or all 2. So like the numbers just say one thing. There is nowhere to run and there is nowhere to hide. And like usually these people have a very kind of like singular experience because usually when I describe base numbers to people, I say your first base number, which is the day you were born, is like the big one where the gold is mined, the one you're supposed to be, the one that's going to feel the best, the one that's going to feel more truthful. And then I usually say, but we all get in trouble and we all get challenged. And most people run or retreat into their second base number. And so they live a little bit from that shadow and they express it and they can hide in it, but they're not supposed to live there forever. They're supposed to have like a balance between the two and lead with the first one. People who only have one number, or if they have a lot of 1 1 or 2 2 or something like that, they become such an intense version of this, and like they can't really hide. And sometimes they can't even fully emphasize with other people's experience of being able to hide or being able to choose something different or being able to like put a different energy forward because they're like, there is only this. And they are very strong, but it's also like sometimes the conversation we need to have is that like everyone else is not having your experience. And most humans, like we go through life and even though we understand that other people are different, we see the world through ourselves. So that's why we get frustrated with other people. Like, why is he not doing it like I want it done? Like, why is he not responding to me like how I would have responded in that moment? Like, we don't understand. But they specifically don't fully understand. Um, and so like having a singular view on the world is really powerful, but it can also be isolating. So like master numbers to me, like while they are beautiful, they are also like isolating often to people to, you know, have that experience.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's interesting, isn't it? How, that not being able to hide from, that dominant influence can be a blessing, but also a curse. Um, so is there any numbers then that tend to indicate someone is a star seed or has a cosmic mission in Chaldean numerology?
I mean, I feel like this is hard to say because I am a spiritual person working in the spiritual field. So a lot of the people who find me are going to have certain like gifts or lineage that it makes sense that there is more and it's beyond what we cover. I would say fours and eights often have this alienation theme. I feel like some people like I also think it's important whether you identify as a star seed or an old soul or whatever it is that like only use this label and understanding as long as it makes you feel freer and more expansive and never as an explanation for why you're alienated or isolated or exclude from something because there are certain numbers that really have that like experience of being the black sheep and not forever looking for some kind of balance between their inner and outer world, or the upper and lower, or the light and dark. And sometimes when I like, if I sit with an eight and we have this conversation where I say, I'm sorry to have to say it, but you're here to connect heaven and earth. And that's a really, really big job. And it's unfortunately not one you're going to complete. You're just going to work on it your whole life. And let's talk about what it could look like and how you could figure out if you're closer or further away from this gift of connecting heaven and earth. And how can we like translate it into words that make sense to you? Because that's also one of my things with like any kind of spiritual thing is like, if it doesn't feel like we're talking about you, and it doesn't matter what I'm sitting and saying. Like it needs to be applicable and to a certain degree practical for you to use the numbers and use this knowledge. So I would say four and eights. I mean, you sevens. Now I say you, but you Hayden. But like the question is if you ever fully arrived sometimes, I feel like with you guys. Like there's a floating element. There's strong connection to that other side. And sometimes it's like it leads to the arts because that like being creative and channeling thing and like making the world more beautiful in whatever way that makes sense to you. It's a little angelic, it's a little starseedy. Um, I also think a lot of people are star seeds and they are just not here to remember that in this lifetime.
Hmm. Absolutely. That's a wonderful way of putting it. And it's so interesting as you're talking about, the dominant number, like me being a seven, of course, in Pythagorean, I always know that as a secondary influence because it's my day number, it's my gift.
Hmm.
Whereas my nine, which is my ruling number,
Oh
which
yeah.
is my life path number, is is one I tend to, I suppose, identify with more. I mean, I love the seven and the nine. But yeah, it's interesting. It's just me trying to get my head around when you're saying eights, for example, and are connected to the Starseed mission. I'm thinking, okay, so you're talking about the day number, um, from my perspective as a Pythagorean numerologist, and that would be people born on the 8th or the 17th or
Or the
anything that kind
26th.
of
Yeah.
adds up to
Yeah.
a number, a number eight.
But to me,
Okay.
it's also that thing of like, what can't we hide from? To me, that's the like Chaldean aspect. So, like, if you're born on the 7th, at some point, the spirituality has to come out. Like, to me, that's like, there might be other numbers, there might be other influences, but at some point, for any seven I've ever met, some of that crazy alien energy needs to come out and be like, I'm seeing more things, whether I'm seeing colors or whether the planets are talking through me or whether, like I work with actors, whether I'm literally channeling this role. Like I'm stepping aside and letting it happen through me. And if I set that to some other people that are also actors, they'd be like, what technique is that? Like, I don't really understand. I'm like, no, no, this technique does not work for you. The channeling aspect will work for the sevens. And sometimes I would also say for like seven energy, say, anything that uses kind of like a sledgehammer is not your tool. Like it's the subtler energies, it's the subtler arts, it doesn't mean it doesn't have impact. It doesn't mean that it's not, yeah, strong, but it's just like, again, like to me, it's like also understanding sometimes, like when I do a session, I try to talk to the first base number and get them or that part of that person into the conversation because there's less hiding as I see it, or less like, yeah, retreating into the other numbers. So like, seven and like you're a seven and a one, 1972. So like, sure, it's leadership, but it's like spiritual leadership. Emphasis on the spiritual while the leadership is still there. So like sometimes it's also like, I'm sure you do that too in Pythagorean numerology. Like, what do we boil it down to? If we just had to do cliff notes or keywords or like, that's my gripe with lots of things. People might be complex, but to help them is usually simple. And it's usually like a reminder of who we are and what we're good at and how fun it is to do the thing we're good at.
That's it. It's aligning with our purpose and feeling good
Yes.
on a day-to-day basis. And numerology has an amazing ability, irrespective of I guess what system of numerology it is, to help you to remember your purpose and your gifts and your potential. Now, I did want to talk about angel numbers with you today as well, but
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
just conscious of the time, and actually, I'd love to get you back in on
Sure.
a future episode to fully focus in on angel numbers, like we've done on Chaldean Numerology today. Would you be
Yes,
open
let's
to
do
coming
it.
back? Yeah, I think it would be
There's so much to
amazing.
cover. Yeah.
There's so much to cover, and you're just such a wealth of information, Novalee. You really are. And I love the way you've kind of really drawn us all into this conversation and exposed, the benefits of Chaldean numerology and how powerful the name really is as an influence in our lives. But, as we mentioned before, you've created the numerology school and, you've so what can students really expect to get from your courses?
Yeah, so I used to run short courses. Now I right now only run longer courses. So that's the full you want to become a professional numerologist course. Sometimes I split it in two, so we have like a basic round and a advanced round. But it's everything. Like I don't gatekeep anything at all. So it's like the base numbers, the name vibrations, the numeroscope, the yearly cycles, patterns within people, patterns within businesses, how you name things, how you price things, like business numerology. I should probably run a course just on that. People are always like, what should I charge? What's should my price be an angel number, or should it end on 7 or 5 or 99? So like all of those aspects, and also how numerology ties into other things like feng shui and like the Bagua map, like that's such an interesting thing to me. I also have like a real passion for teaching you not just the specific of this tool, but also like how to do a reading, how to do a good reading, how to be a good spiritual, ethical reader or coach. While I'm not a coach, my background in acting is really helpful for some of these things. I've also taken a certification in like nervous system and neuroscience. There's a lot of aspects to creating safe space so people can actually hear what you're saying and you can convey all your wisdom. So like that's also a big part of it, like how to run a spiritual business if that's what you're interested in. Um, And then, of course, how to change names because it's really fun to help people when they're like, "Ooh, new identity, like new, like clean slate, new me. Who's she? Who's he?" Like that whole journey of holding people's hands through that thing and like how to pick the right new numeroscope. We don't really pick names. We pick numeroscopes. So we pick name vibrations. They pick names. But like that's also what I teach. Like based on where you've been and where you want to be going, what kind of numeroscope and name would like fit that and support that.
Wow, I love that. That's amazing. It's so, so powerful. And I can imagine so many people out there that are like, oh my God, I've been wanting to reinvent myself for so long now. And, I've not known where to turn. And, you provide a massive solution for that, to help people really have a kickstart to, their new dawning, so where can people then connect with you to learn more about your books and your courses? Because obviously I mentioned before that you've got a beautiful numerology bundle featuring two books, a little bit of angel numbers and a little bit of numerology. So
Yeah.
like where do people like buy the book or, find
Yes. So
you?
yes, please go to my website. It's novaleewilder.com. I'm also like you can get my books on Amazon and wherever books are sold. If you want a signed copy, you should really go to my website. I will sign it and I will send it to you. I also am on Instagram and like all the social media platforms. If you search Novalee Wilder, I will pop up. I also have it's sleeping right now. The podcast is taking a break, but it will be back with new episodes, the numerology podcast. And I am mostly active on my email newsletter. So please, if you are interested in numerology, go sign up for a newsletter. You get an introduction to the 9 base numbers so you know who you are within the system. And if you're more interested in numerology, a little bit of numerology is really like an excellent short but sweet primer and like introduction to Chaldean numerology. And you learn how to like calculate a numeroscope. And then you're going to have even more questions. And then you can come join us at the numerology school.
It's so great that you provide that central point for everybody to get together in a little numerology geek family. So you can all geek out together,
We
which
are
is
geeks.
great.
We are geeks. Like we're not normal. We talk numbers all day long. Yeah.
I love that. So what's next for you then on your numerology journey?
So I'm in the works of like writing this next book, which is not numerology specific, but it's just one of the things I've really have thought about is that how do we create safe space and how do we invite people to get present when we do readings? Like I find that one of the like through doing some certification within like neuroscience and nervous system work, I've realized that we don't have enough words and not enough explanations and enough step by step in the spiritual field to figure out like what is a good reading and how can I make it better. And even if you want to like elevate your business, maybe attract a specific kind of client, how do you make that specific client feel safe? So like I'm working on a book that tentatively is named How to Give a Good Reading. because it's like super down to earth and like specific, but it really is like how to structure your whole business around making people safe enough to have a breakthrough working with you. Um, yeah, so it's specifically, of course, for like spiritual practitioners, but it could be implemented by anyone who
Yeah.
does like any kind of one-of-one work or specifically in the world of Zoom calls. Like we're not always in the same space. We can't always like just feel each other out. Sometimes we really have to think about like things like what do I have in my background and like how do I do housekeeping and like set up like the space like we did just before this call, like how do I connect and create safety so we can both be present and so like the animal within us is not actually scared of being in this space with another person.
And that is so, so important. I've noticed that a lot actually over the years of teaching people the Colour Mirrors Practitioner Training Program, is that once they finish the course, they sort of hide all of
Mm.
those gifts and, feeling safe to be able to do the work is huge. There's so many gifted and talented healers and counselors and guides that hide because of this fear of either judgment or persecution or consequences for their actions. So it's wonderful that, you help people to find that safety within so that they can really express their magic because it's needed, isn't it? It really is
Yeah, and it's
needed.
also one of those like, just because you have a bad reading doesn't mean that that person was actually a bad reader. And sometimes I will also give a bad reading and I'm like, oh wait, was was I off or like was this person like what happened? Why didn't we connect? Like why didn't it land? And sometimes like realizing that maybe I didn't like maybe sometimes it is my job to create more safety and sometimes it's even before people show up. It's like the emails you send out. It's like you complimented my website before, but like even before they enter this space, they enter your store. Like,
Mm.
and even like some people do readings at like fairs and stuff like that. And how can you invite people to like journey into themselves in a safe place and in a safe space with a safe reader before they're even there? Like how can you create like a big blanket of safety for them to
Yeah.
like step onto? If that makes
Yeah.
sense. I want more of that generally in the world. We all need a little more safety in this day and age.
Yeah, that's never a truer word spoken. So, is there one final message then that you'd like to share with listeners about their numbers, their destiny, or their cosmic alignment?
Yes. I would just say anything that you think are unchangeable around, like in your life is not unchangeable. We have free will. We can change things, names, hair color, where we live, how we live, who we live with. So my like advice or my little nugget of wisdom is like if there's something that's not working in your life, you have the power to change it. And if it's your name, come talk to me. But if it's not, still do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, so it's been an amazing and powerful, actually an incredible conversation. I've certainly enjoyed myself today, Novalee. I hope that everybody watching as well as have gained, some really valuable insights into Chaldean numerology. Apologies that we didn't get to go into the angel numbers today, but we
Next time.
will explore that on a future episode. So make sure that you tune back in to see Novalee again. And if you loved this episode, then please make sure that you subscribe to the Numerology Show so that you never miss one of the episodes. I'll be bringing more fascinating interviews with some of the world's leading numerologists and diving deep into the mystical world of numbers, life paths, and cosmic blueprints. So don't forget to like this video and to leave a comment and let me know your biggest takeaway from today's episode. So if you can leave a few comments, it's really valued by me and it helps the video sort of move up in the YouTube algorithm as well. And if you're ready to explore numerology even further, make sure that you check out Novalee's book bundle and also her numerology school and podcast as well. So thanks again for watching. And remember, the universe speaks in numbers. Are you ready to listen? See you in the next episode. Bye for now.